1 out of 3. Those are the odds of you being born in a country where you would not have a good enough internet connection to watch this video in 240p. If you are the age 44 and above, you currently have lived longer than most humans have throughout history. And if you are under the age of about 15, you are a part of a generation whose entire life is archived on the internet and stored on servers as ones and zeros. Society has come a long way in the past 100 years or so, especially considering that exactly 1 century ago, the newest high-end innovation society had was the toaster, which cost roughly $97 after adjusting for inflation. But are we lucky to be living in this time period? And more importantly, do you consider yourself to be lucky? Are you a lucky person? And the way you answer that question might have a much bigger effect on your life than you may think. When you think of luck, you might think of something like rolling dice. If you were to roll a 7 at the perfect moment when you needed to roll a 7, you might consider that to be luck. But based on probability theory, you actually had a 16% chance of rolling a 7. So your odds of rolling a 7 were not that terrible. However, something that would seem luckier and a lot more improbable is rolling a 7 times in a row. The chances of that happening are roughly 0.00035%, meaning that if you were to run an experiment where you rolled a pair of dice 7 times in a row and then repeated that over and over again, you would have to run the experiment roughly 300,000 times before you rolled a 7 times in a row. And by the way, this happened in real life a few weeks ago when my girlfriend massacred me in Settlers of Catan, and yes, I'm still bitter about that. But is this really luck? Theoretically, if you were to calculate the properties and position of the dice, the air resistance, and the table's properties at the exact moment that you release the dice from your hand, then you could predict the outcome of the dice with 100% accuracy before the dice even hit the table. Because at the end of the day, rolling dice is just a cause and effect physics experiment. And this cause and effect relationship is part of something called determinism. You see, determinism is the view that everything that has ever happened in the universe is caused by a previous event. So the dice landing as a 7 was not caused by really random chance. It was caused by the exact way that you threw the dice. And then one step back, you throwing the dice at the exact moment that you did was caused by your motor neurons firing, telling your fingers to move. And then your motor neurons fired because the neurons in your prefrontal cortex chose to throw the dice instead of doing something else, like standing up. And the neurons in your prefrontal cortex made that choice because of the previous memories and series of events that you have had in your life that are stored in the hippocampus. So the point of determinism, or hard determinism in this case, is saying that every single movement, choice, and thought you have ever had in your life is actually predetermined by the events that came before it. So the reason that you are actually watching this video is not because you really chose to watch it, but more because of all of the events in your life previous to this have led you towards watching this video. And if you were to take a belief in determinism all the way back to before the Earth was formed, to before the birth of stars, all the way back to the beginning of the Big Bang, then we get something interesting. If we had something like a supercomputer and we knew the position of all the energy, matter, and space-time properties of our universe at the moment of the Big Bang, then we would theoretically have predicted every single event that would have happened throughout the history of the universe. But this also means that you are lucky. Think about this. Roughly 13.8 billion years ago, the universe began expanding and creating things like hydrogen, helium, lithium, and elements like this began spreading throughout the entire universe. Then about 1 million years after that, stars and galaxies began to form. Then these stars began exploding into supernova, which ended up creating more stars, and then those exploded, and this kept happening for about 9 billion years up until one supernova explosion ended up creating the Earth. And after the Earth was created, the first single-cell form of life arose on Earth, which later became multicellular life, and that became complex life, and after a few billion years of global disasters, wars, and famine, you were finally created because a sperm cell hit an egg at the exact microsecond that it did. So think about that. Think about the improbability of you even being alive today. It took nearly 14 billion years of cause and effect events just to create you. Don't feel lucky enough yet? Well, let's dive a little bit deeper. Roughly 8% of the population of the world lives on $1.90 per day or less. About 50% of the world's population lives on $6 a day or less, or is unable to meet their basic needs adequately. Roughly 1/3 of the world's population is living with a chronic disease that will significantly affect their quality of life. And some of the leading causes of death in the majority of the world are treatable ailments like diarrhea, HIV, malaria, and general airway infections. But yet, if you're watching this video, most of those probably do not apply to you. Now, the question that I posed to you at the beginning of this video was, are you a lucky person? Because the way you answer this question is a really good indicator about how successful you will be throughout your lifetime. Now, let's dissect your answer. If you answered no to the question, are you a lucky person, you will likely have a negative view on the world and on your life as well. This pessimism will likely make your situation worse, and you will be less likely to stay motivated and persevere through any hardships. If you answered yes to the question, then you are likely to have some sort of optimism about your life. And this optimism is correlated with you being more motivated and more likely to persevere and improve your current situation. And there are several scientific studies to back this up. For example, there was a study done in 2007 where several elementary schools and their students were examined. The students were asked about how optimistic they were about their school life, their teachers, and academics. And as it turns out, the more optimistic a student was about their life, their school life, their academics, and so on, the higher their future grades were. Another study examined entrepreneurial literature over the course of about 25 years and found something quite similar. They found that being very optimistic about the future was highly correlated with the success of entrepreneurs. So in a sense, the question, are you a lucky person, is kind of a litmus test for the real question, which is, what do you think about your life and the future? And as it turns out, this is a key indicator for perseverance, motivation, and success. Now, I would just like to mention that just because you are optimistic doesn't mean that you will become successful. But I'm just saying that optimism and success are pretty highly correlated. So now I would like to ask you that question one last time. Are you a lucky person? You know what? Let me answer that for you. It took the creation of the universe, several star supernova, the birth of the Earth, the creation of single-celled life, several billion years of evolution, your parents meeting at the exact moment in space-time that they did, and you avoiding death for all of the years that you have been alive. It took all of those improbable events just to let you watch this video. So are you a lucky person? Yes, you are. So make the most of it. And speaking of luck, I currently have a game coming out that relies a little bit on luck. It's a card game where you get to go and battle historical figures throughout ancient history. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link down below to my Discord or my gaming channel. And if you liked this video, I have a whole playlist based on other documentaries and videos like this. I'll leave a link to that down below, and some of the links will probably be on screen right now. So thank you very much for watching. Please click on the next video in this playlist, and I will see you guys in just a few seconds.